To TechMasterminds. My name is Kate.
And my name is Oksana.
We are really happy to see all of you here and thank you for interest in our initiative.
TechMasterminds is a series of tech webinars where people from top tech companies share their knowledge.
Yeah, and this webinar is organized by Sigma Software, a global IT consulting company that has offices all over around the globe, as our entities are. We have audience from Sweden, Bulgaria, Poland, Portugal, US, Ukraine for sure. Thank you once again for coming.
TechMasterminds are our monthly webinars, so subscribe to our YouTube channel and never miss our next webinars, our next events. So today we are joined by Oleksandr Sabov. Oleksandr, hello, do you hear us well?
Yeah, I can hear well. Hi.
Awesome. Oleksandr is a senior UI engineer at Netflix. Could you please tell us more about yourself and about your career path?
Yeah, sure. Originally I'm from Ukraine, and around 11 years ago I moved to Germany to get my master's degree in computer science.
Mm-hmm.
After that I joined IBM in Germany, spent 4 years, learned a lot about design and things like that. Later I moved to Poland where I joined Google to work on cloud UI there.
Mm-hmm.
I was leading one of the teams there. It was really fun, and lately I switched to Netflix where I'm building now UIs for Netflix.
Sounds very, very interesting. I'm very interested in your speech, and before we start, I propose you to answer just a few quick questions so everyone will know a bit more about yourself and about your personality. Would you mind?
Sure.
So are you more evening or morning person?
100% more morning person.
Why?
I think I enjoy sleeping a lot in general. I have a couple of even funny pictures of people taking pictures of me sleeping in random places. So I always excited to sleep, but that has a side effect. That means I wake up early, right? So that's why I'm more like a morning person.
Okay. Do you like more flexibility or structure in your work?
I think these are two important things. So structure in one things, flexibility in other things. Mm-hmm. So I don't think they are opposite to each other in a way. Like structure in let's say documents that you write is important. Structure in your schedule is important. However, like flexibility in your in your mind and in your behavior and things like that is also important. So.
Thank you. Are you a risky person? Do you like to take risks?
I don't think so, to be honest. I don't think so. I think I have low tolerance to risk.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I see.
Nice.
Okay, and the last question, do you enjoy to share your engineering knowledge with audience, with people?
Yeah, 100%. That's why I'm here. I'm always excited to meet new people, talk about things that hopefully will bring some value to others. Hopefully will also inspire some people to think about their work, what they can do, and things like that. So I enjoy when people share, because 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I was studying, there were many people who were inspiring me. So I feel like this is something that you also have to give back.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think we are ready to start. Thank you so much for your answers.
Yeah, and actually I'm pretty excited to hear as well about your takeaways, as Oleksandr has experienced not only in one big company like Netflix, but also he worked for Google, and it's really gripping to know how you implement, which expertise you took from both companies, with which cultural aspects, and how all of that help you with your like smaller projects or startups. I see that our audience is quite active today in the comment field. So guys, you can put not only your comments but questions as well. After the speech, we will have a Q&A session, like for 10 and 15 minutes. We will have opportunity to talk directly with Oleksandr and get answers to all our questions. Oleksandr, we wish you good luck, pleasant audience. Enjoy your speech and see you in, I think, 30 or 40 minutes. Good luck.
All right, thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me today. By the way, you can call me Sasha. This is a short name from Oleksandr. All right, so let's get started. So today I'm going to talk about big tech practices in startups. And actually, my first slide was supposed to tell what I already told, all the story. So we're just going to skip that. Yeah, the one thing is, if you want to read the same information on LinkedIn, it's there. Here's the QR code, but that's completely up to you. All right, so what we are going to talk about this today is this quick intro. Then we're going to talk about culture, about processes and teams. And the last chapter is teams, where I'm going to touch more technical topics. I'm not going to go into details. It's going to be very high level, but I do hope that you will still find it useful. So with that, let's get into that. And the whole talk is basically a little story about startup. So let me actually make this smaller so I can see the slides. All right, looks good now. So yeah, meet a little tech startup, basically a small team of engineers, PM, QA, and a founder. They are on their journey to build the next big thing. They're working for a while, and at some point they start to get success. They start to get some sales, some conversion, and they manage to make their first round of fundings. And everyone is really excited for what comes next. So at this point of time, we could say that each founder has a dream. They dream that their startup, a little startup, one day becomes a unicorn. And when this startup gets funding, one of the things I feel like very common for startups to do is to have this idea that since now we have funding, we've got our first success, now we can go for the best talent out there and grow our business. And so what happens next with the startup is basically a couple months later, an executive from a big tech company comes in, and slowly their startups start to change. So, and basically in this talk, we will see how the startup changes over time. This is, as a disclaimer, this is not a real story. It's made up just for sake of showing how different things change over time. So everything here is not real in a way. So yeah, let's go into the first chapter, which is culture. All right, so why does each company feel different? You see these two pictures, they're very different. One shows a very clean street where everything is in order and looks good. On the other hand, you have right picture where there is bad buildings and things like that. So whenever, at least from my experience, whenever you join a company, it always feels different. There is always this unique flavor, unique vibe that you can experience only in this place. Sometimes they might be similar, sometimes they are very different, but that's what we call, or I think that's what we can call culture. And from my perspective, culture is defined by behaviors and attitudes that are rewarded and tolerated. So on one hand, when a company takes care of rewarding good behaviors, good attitudes, it positively impacts things. On the other hand, what kind of behaviors and attitudes company is tolerating, defining another edge of the spectrum. For example, you probably heard about broken windows theory that says, if you have a broken window on the street in the building, soon the whole neighborhood will slowly decay and get worse, and there will be more crime and things like that. So basically, just an example that by tolerating a broken window, company may get in troubles long term because of the culture of decay. So when we're talking about our little startup, everything starts small. And when you have a small company where it's like, 10 people, 5 people, it's culture there defined in a way where, founders, they basically can influence a lot the company, the culture, they know people, everything is built on relationship, on personal relationship. So they don't, at this point, companies don't think a lot about culture because it just happens naturally. Often it is reflection of founders' attitude and founders' view on how business is done. So, by meeting and talking to a founder of a startup, I think you might get like a quick, let's say, a sneak peek into how the culture of the company would feel. Are they a good person? Like, how do they behave? What they're, is this a good business and things like that? A lot of things can be answered by that. But when the company starts to grow, especially with the pace companies grow, in Silicon Valley, when the size changes very quickly, the culture that is maintained by personal relationship doesn't work anymore, because each time you add another zero to a number of employees, when you go from 10 to 100, when you go from 100 to 1,000, things change so much that you need to reinvent how people communicate, how people work, and things like that. So let's go back to our little startup that starts to grow. And before the change, before the grow, leaders basically didn't have much transparency into like for what they need to be rewarded. They were just focused on doing good job, focused on maintaining good relationship with the founder, with the decision makers, but there was not much transparency or clarity on what they are supposed to do in general. And leaders are usually, when I say leaders, I'm talking about like TLs, PMs, like people who affect the company, key people in the company. So with the change, with the growth, what changed is that there became a clear path and a clear way for leaders to be rewarded, and that's by growing and developing people. So when there is an incentive for leaders to grow and promote people, it creates positive and productive atmosphere in the company, and that's great, because in this case, your manager, your leader, whoever, is your ally, right? Because they are incentivized to help you, to develop you, to help you grow. On the other hand, we company doesn't want to just promote people randomly, right? Because if we just say, hey, manager, we will reward you for promoting people, why don't you just go and promote everyone? So the trick here is that managers empower to grow people, but they are not decision makers when it comes to the actual decision whether promote or let's say raise your compensation. So there is a committee or like a other team that is kind of blind, meaning they don't have personal relationship with people. They just know what kind of bar we expect for the people to reach before they can be promoted and rewarded. So this way, company can enforce that across the board, like across the organizations or teams, we have similar expectations, And when people start to move, because when the company starts to grow, people start to, you don't want to prevent people from moving around. And the worst thing can happen is when you basically have one team where, let's say, senior engineer means something completely different that it means on the other side of the company. You want people to be rewarded fairly. All right. The other thing, so, as I said, when the company is small, it's everything is based on personal relationship. When the company grows, you can't take for granted that people will help each other, because helping each other takes time, takes resources, takes energy, and what's not. So obviously there are people who are willing to do that without incentives, without rewards, what's not. But it is healthy for the company to encourage people to help each other, encourage peer-to-peer feedback culture, and make sure that people are basically rewarded for helping each other. This way, you basically incentivizing good behaviors and attitudes. So an example would be when company does some, let's say, performance review for employees, the peer feedback would actually will have weight on the final decision. So it's not just your manager, it's also your peers who can, in return, can help you get recognition for the work you do, for the help you give. All right, and the next thing is everyone is rewarded for performance. So there is a lot of, I would say the big tech companies are thinking a lot about performance, and they want to enable people to perform on their best. And that's why performance matters. For example, Netflix uses this idea of a dream team. They say, Netflix says that we are not a family, we are a sports team, and everyone is expected to perform on a certain level. Otherwise, you will be benched, or like in a sports team, you will be asked to leave, not because you are like not a good person or anything like that, but simply because there are certain expectations on how certain expectations for people. So let's talk about performance a little bit more. There might be a temptation to fake performance by putting more hours. So this is something that is, I think, kind of like an obvious idea, right? So why don't I just put more hours into work, show that I can perform, and see what happens. And how to deal with this is that companies, when they start to grow, they know about this, and the idea is that it's not enough to show performance in a short time frame, let's say for half a year. You just like very well executed the project, done great job, and then you disappeared for, let's say, 3 months because you simply burned out. You wasted all your energy, all your resources. So that won't work. You do need to show consistent performance that is not sacrificing your work-life balance, and that is actually the way you work, basically the way you can execute things and things like that. So this is a simple example how make sure that the performance is measured correctly. So you don't show it on a short period of time, but you show the trajectory that shows that you have positive move there. All right, so that's all about performance, or I mean culture. Let's talk about processes now. Right, before the change, the startup was running 2 weeks sprint, 2 week long sprints, and whenever they had like a, let's say, bad release or an important big feature release, and they were flooded with bugs, they would simply give up and switch to Kanban, and handle all the incoming bugs. So after the change, when the company started grow, the way they started approach problems also changed. So instead of giving people well-defined expectations, let's say criteria or detailed requirements that describe what exactly must be done, the company decided that why don't we, we hired smart people, we pay them well, why don't we give them problems that are actually require them to think more, and not only about how exactly we're going to implement this, but also like how do we even solve this business problem. So an example would be that usually if your ticket that you are working on takes you, I don't know, a week, 2 or 3 to solve, that means it's a very well-defined thing that you probably don't need to think much about. But if we give a problem that is, let's say, 3, 6 SV months of work, that changes things a lot. And now from like thinking about very low level things, you are empowered to basically influence business, solve fun problems, and show your impact. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is that before the change, the company was where basically had a couple of teams that are well-defined teams where people would just like work on well-defined problem. And what changed is that they let you or as engineer or anyone else to basically find your way and involve other people. I think a great example of this would be Valve, a company that does business in gaming, basically CS, Dota, all these games done by Valve. And they have this concept of tables, movable tables. So everyone in their office can move around whenever they want. And that also means they can switch teams easily. And if you don't like your project anymore, or someone is pitching some really nice idea, you can simply switch. I think they took it a little bit to an extreme. I haven't seen this happening at Google or Netflix so far. But the idea is really interesting. It's how do you involve people easily into projects that have high impact, high value. Right. So after the change, when they started to grow, people were given, let's say, more freedom, meaning less processes, less meetings, less day-to-day check-ins on things you work on. It means just it takes a lot of trust to do that. You need to trust people to say, I trust you, go and explore and do your best work. I trust you that you won't be like wasting your time and things like that. We trust that you have the best intent. And one of the positive things that we also trust you to go and do some failures, because obviously when you have freedom, not always you will go into the right direction. But the assumption is that by exploring different options, different things, different solutions for a given problem, you would also come up with a lot of learnings. And how does it work? How does it even work? How can you give people so much freedom and trust? And I think it works based on the things I mentioned before. So engineers are evaluated by looking at what they've done, let's say in a long period of time, let's say half a year or so, maybe longer. And engineers that bring 100, like a long list of small bugs they fixed, they would be like recognized a little bit, but real recognition or reward will get engineers that bring a couple of things that were really impactful for the business, that change something, and you could actually show it with some numbers that you had a significant impact on, I don't know, performance or conversion or anything that is actually like meaningful. So that's how you can balance these things. You give freedom, but then you keep people accountable without actually doing the day-to-day rituals. Let's call them that way. All right, and the very important thing, that there is emphasis on impact and lending. What does it even mean? Basically, it's not enough to launch something, because launching is just halfway. What really matters is whether the impact landed for the users. So how much of the work you've done is used by users? How do they? Is it good? Is it used? Is it usable? All these questions really matter, rather than we had this nice launch, and then but a week later, no one remembers it or no one takes care of it. So yeah, by rewarding impact and lending, you also encourage good behaviors. All right. So finally, we've got into the teams section, where I'm going to talk a little bit more about things like I guess more practical things. So let's jump into that. So usually let's talk about the startup again. The startup was not taking design seriously, so they would hire basically an agency, or let's say involve an agency whenever they need to. They would involve them very late, and they would usually ask them to make things look good or look according to their guidelines, style guide, whatever. So there was not much recognition of the UX and user research value. And with the change, with the growth, with the executive, what started to change is that decisions for leaders started to make decisions based on data, and they started to prioritize things that make users excited. So simple things like, do we have enough insights? Do we track enough information to basically understand how good are we doing for this particular thing? Do we measure it well? These are questions that we need to answer. Another thing is, when we want to build something very expensive, it will take us, I don't know, one software engineering year to build. Are we sure that this thing is going to make our users happy? Can we just build a quick prototype and show it and see how our users react? And if the reaction is like, meh, it's cool, but whatever, then probably the investment is not worth it. You would want to hear that your user is like, yes, when I can have it, I want to have it now. And then you that would justify that, yes, we probably would want to commit 1 year of engineering to basically build this for the users. All right, let's move into a little bit more technical topic, which is monorepo. This is something that is quite popular among big tech, and one of the reasons is that it basically enables and enforces cross-team collaboration and knowledge practices sharing on the code level. So when there are silos between teams, it is really hard to collaborate and contribute. But when all the code in the company is accessible, when you can find things, when you can learn what other people do, share things, and easily across teams, it enables a lot of things that otherwise won't be possible or won't be, well, teams just, I guess, would try to avoid this because, whenever something is hard to do, it's it will be done less in general, right? So if you want encourage something, make sure it's easy for the people to do that. So, and as you know, like sharing code, sharing ideas, sharing practices, sharing knowledge is really beneficial for the teams. So you can make sure that we don't solve the same problems twice. We can make sure that by we are maintaining code quality across the board and things like that. So these are things that could be solved or could be cultivated by the single code base. Another thing that is also very common is gRPC and GraphQL as a single source of truth for the API and the UI types. The idea here is that let's also again switch back to the little startup we had before. So classic REST API where there are some backend types defined, and the UI, even though using TypeScript, would need to somehow figure out like what are the types provided by the API and things like that. Where gRPC and GraphQL, where you have like a protobuf and or GraphQL schema, enables teams to basically work on the same document in a way where you say whenever you need to work on a project, you just discuss a GraphQL schema that will be changed or created, and this is basically a common language for everyone. And not only that, later when things get implemented, it also binds both backend and frontend to the same types, which makes everyone's life easier. The next thing is before the growth startup had a small QA engineering team. They would do some manual tests, do some smoke tests. But after the change, they were asked to let go, right? Because it's common for big tech companies to take care of QA on the engineering level. So basically, everyone is responsible for delivering well-tested and reliable solutions, and have tools to prevent outages in case of troubles. I'm not saying this is like across the board. Obviously, there are QA engineers and automated tested in big tech that work. But from my perspective, from my experience, we were always asked to take care of this part on our own. So that's why the picture you see here is like people get together in a room before a like significant launch and test stuff together, find if there are any problems, and then go back and fix them. And that's probably not enough. All right, I thought there will be a testing slide right now, but okay, let's talk about code reviews first. So code reviews are taken also very seriously because it does matter what kind of practices you enforce for the teams across the board. So one of the things that changed compared to what how usually things is done is that there are much less subjective judgments, because whenever you switch teams, you go from one TL to another TL, you don't want to adapt to basically their tastes, their personal views, their personal subjective opinions on how to write code. you want to be, comfortable switching and speak the same language across the company. And that's why things like code reviews with very detailed style guides and guidelines matter. Yeah, that's the slide I was looking for. So everyone is enabled and encouraged to write tests. And basically, before the change, the company was just like, yeah, we, we write tests, but there are no. It's kind of hard, and there are not much infra for that, and things like that. And big tech basically invests a lot into these things because unit and end-to-end tests are fundamental for reliable software. And if we want to deliver good experiences for the users, that means also investing more time and resources into these things. All right, not gonna stop here. The other important thing is experiments. Whenever there's a new big feature, it is critical to make sure we can easily switch it off in case of troubles. So when there's a launch happening, the code would usually sit in production for a while at this point, and it's only the matter of like switching a toggle to launch something big. And as I said, in case of troubles, it's also a matter of seconds to switch it off. Canarying is another common practice to so the startup would probably hire SREs that would take care of infra and introduce something like canarying. They would introduce gradual rollouts to reduce impact of bad releases. So the downside is that the startups cloud bill doubled after they've done all these kind of fancy changes, but the founders thought that this is a good idea because you basically pay for better user experience in the end. You making sure that we are not launching bad changes to all users. We are testing them gradually, and in case of troubles, we reduce the impact of bad releases pretty much. So it's always a trade-off. And if you have the funding and the money to do that, you would probably want to leverage that. And the other important thing that was introduced is fast rollbacks, basically an easy way. As I said, it's before. So it's really important to give people tools that allow them to react and fix issues in case of troubles. And the most obvious thing that you would probably want to have is just like something went wrong with this release. Let's just switch back to the version that was stable. And you do want to do that very quickly to avoid impacting users. So again, this is something that might increase your bill, but here you would need to, see how much value does it bring, how important for the business to stay up all the time. All right, and then here's the last slide I have for you today. Again, a little bit of culture. So very common thing that you might see or might experience is that people, when something goes wrong, if the company has culture that is not tolerant for admitting mistakes and for escalating them and fixing, that means people will basically stay silent for a longer time and will try to fix issues on their own just to make sure they are not get blamed for whatever happened. So, and that has negative impact on users, on business, on many other things. So what you would want to have is something like blameless culture, where, and postmortem is an important word as well, but basically no one is blaming anyone for when things go wrong. The idea is that instead of blaming, you sit together, you solve the problem as fast as possible, and later, when everything is fine and you involve all the people who had to help you, you sit down and you think, what can we do that this never happens again? And instead of like blaming someone, you say, the architecture of the system designed in a way where it allowed for this failure to happen. So it's probably was architectural problem or whatever else problem. So let's focus on fixing it now. All right, and with that, thank you so much. As I said, I'm from Ukraine, so please do support Ukraine if you feel like that. And yeah, thank you so much. Are there any questions?
Sasha, thank you so much for your speech, for your presentation and all the advice. I would like to start with the question because actually I wrote many questions to you. The first question is, so do you have all of that written in at Netflix? Do you have it like written in some rules or?
So there some things. So there is a cultural memo, public document that is available to everyone, and it talks a lot about, dream team idea, feedback, how it is important for the company. And one thing that I want to say that, it's not only written there, it also used a lot. So it's not just words, it's the way it is. So which is, I think, great. So yeah, please, I think you can just find it online. Just Google the Netflix culture memo and you will find it. It's a nice read. I do recommend.
So also I wrote the question on our YouTube channel, but it's like the second question for that one. How do you reward people accept money to do their best?
Yeah, so money is the obvious one. So people usually are excited about solving interesting and hard problems. And you reward people by giving them opportunities that are exciting for them. Meaning, let's say, each person is different. So the answer would be, specific to you. But let's say I'm interested in diving into some very technical advanced topics, and I could be rewarded by just like I would be given an opportunity to do that. For some person, other person, it will be exciting to, let's say, lead a team. I want to, become a mentor for less experienced people. I see a challenge there, so I would like to do that. So you would be rewarded with opportunities to basically do what you like, what you are passionate about. It's not like you don't have it by default, but let's say by doing great job, you unlock, in the game's terms, you unlock more things to explore, more things to solve, because leaders want you to grow, and that means you don't do constantly the same thing. You do something that develops you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have many questions, but I think everyone wants to ask something. And
yeah, we have several in the YouTube chat. The first one goes from Sergey Weiser. Can you share an example where a big tech practice didn't work for a smaller company? Really group in one.
Yeah, thank you, Sergey. I hope the weather in New York is good. All right, so when it didn't work. So let me think.
While we have
go on.
Sorry.
Yeah. So I would say that by applying some of the things, for example, by trying to over-engineer things, let's say a startup, little startup that grows from like 10 engineers to let's say 50, tries to adopt some of the APIs or approaches that used in big tech company for the sake of just like being tech savvy, that won't work, because often you would see that startups start to copy solutions or approaches that are that assume that you have millions of users and assume that you have like fast grow, and they kind of like anticipate this, but it never happens. So basically there is an investment happening that is an over-engineered system that took years to develop, and it never actually had a chance to perform or do, or see the light of the high load that it was built for. I hope that answers.
Thank you. Sasha, what about the illustrations? Did you draw it by your own? We have the question about that.
Of course not. It took me some time. I just used Midjourney to generate them. It was really funny or fun to play with the prompts, see how it works. So yeah, definitely recommend.
Okay, we have several questions in YouTube, but I also have one. So you tried a lot of big tech companies. Which culture do you think you are most appealing to? Like which culture of company where you worked reflect your ambitions, reflect your values the most?
All right. Yeah, good question. So I think each company, as I said, has its own interesting flavor. I could say that I took something unique from each company, and I would like to acknowledge that, for example, IBM taught me a lot about design and how designers work and how they approach problems. So it was very important part of my life. But Google gave me a lot about like engineering best practices. How do you communicate your ideas on a paper? I became very comfortable in writing things. It became very easy for me to also think about what really matters versus just like what is not worth discussing in a team and things like that. So, and then Netflix, I'm here for, let's say, 4 months-ish. So it's a little bit too early to say, but so far it's Netflix feels very how you say free, or like there is a lot of freedom that is in the company. I feel that we are still I'm here in Warsaw, which is like a new location for Netflix for engineering. So we are like a fairly young team. So we are still like figuring out how to work and operate. But in general, my conclusion is that each new company I join, I enjoy more because all previous companies prepared me better for the next one.
Awesome answer.
Thanks. We have questions from Mike. And also some guys thank you for inspirational speech. Mike asks, how do you find the right time for a big scale cool thing in a startup hurry?
Say it again, please. How do you find time for big what?
For a big change.
Okay.
For a big scale.
Okay, big scale in a small startup.
Yeah. How do you find the right time for a big scale? As I understood, how do you find when you understand that it's right time for scale in a startup?
Yeah. Well, in general, like this is completely, my perspective based on just because I don't have experience of scaling startup, so I cannot really talk about this from my personal experience. But my take on it would be that fast growth in general, when you grow really fast is hard. And again, if we are talking about workforce, so let's say you have like a small team of 10 people, then you have 100 people a couple of months. So this is always hard, and this is
challenge,
a huge challenge and things like that. So I'm personally like an advocate of slower pace growth, when you can make sure the culture remains, you onboard people and things like that. So if the question was about that part, if the question was about scale in terms of like scaling solutions that we are building to more users and things like that, then it has to be done when it really needed, meaning when there is real growth and not just like anticipation of something coming maybe one day.
Okay, thank you. Cool.
I hope I answered it, but I'm not sure.
I think it's very difficult to answer to that question, because every startup should know to feel when it's ready to scale. It's different for each startup, and it's not like it's a stage.
Yeah, it's kind of.
I just feel like you have to be like more scaled.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very difficult to answer. I have no idea how to answer that.
Just a generic question, Mike. If you have like any clarification, just put it in the comment field. And I think the webinar is going to its end. Oksana, do you have any other question to ask?
Actually, yes. So back into Netflix, I would like to. So everyone talks about Netflix culture. You can find many articles about that, like guidelines, so on. So when you joined the Netflix company, what impressed you the most there, in their culture?
Mm-hmm. So what impressed me the most? Let me think. Well, I think it's a unique company in terms of domain, meaning, many other tech companies, they are purely tech companies. Mm-hmm. Like Google does a lot of things in different topics, but it's all about technical engineering. And Netflix is a company that is basically consists of two companies, which is one is engineering, and it's very engineering centered, and another is creative, where it's all about being creative, creating movies, creating series, creating all content. And the domain of like as an engineer, learning about creative domain is super exciting and super interesting. I think that is really unique.
Sounds awesome. Okay, I think we can
Let me check if we have any other. No, just another thank you words and great answer. I like these guys, so a lot of appreciations in the comment field. Thank you, Oleksandr, for sharing your expertise, for sharing your observation. And I want to remind that we will have a recording of the session, so if you'd like to watch, you can do it, and we will share the recording and feedback form just in the next several days. So, Oksana, do you think we will have another webinar next month?
I hope so. Why do you ask me that? Of course we will have next webinar. So once again, we remind you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, so you can see all the new videos and streams with us.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, our audience, for coming. Thank you, Oleksandr, and see you next month. Have a nice evening. Bye.
Thank you so much. Have a nice evening all. Bye.